today's episode, we're going to do a playbook series. This is a new series that we're launching in 2025. The goal of this is at Outbound Squad, we work with a ton of the fastest growing software companies out there, and we want to give you guys really actionable playbooks, best practices, strategies, tactics, etc., that we teach our best clients. So today's focus is going to be on cold email. So we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk about the state of cold email. Once we give the state of cold email, we don't want you guys to sit here for an hour and not get anything tactical out of this. So we're going to give you a framework called the reply method that you can use to write better emails. We're going to break down some emails as well. And we have a couple guests that I'll introduce here in a second that are going to help us with these breakdowns, add some commentary, guest experts, all that kind of good stuff. So for those of you asking, the call will be recorded. We'll email this to you guys afterwards. Because we have literally over 1,000 people in here, the best way for us to answer your questions would be to use the Q&A function here in Zoom. So if you drop a question in the chat, we're probably going to miss it. If you have something that you want to get answered, make sure to click the Q&A button at the bottom, and we will do our best to answer that. Okay, so before we dig in, want to give a shout out to our two partners that make these webinars possible. Zoom Info. I think one of the things I've loved seeing about Zoom Info is just the growth over time of being more than just a lead and data provider. Like, you guys literally do everything. It's pretty freaking cool, but I think Copilot's probably one of the things I'm most excited about. So being able to sit and have recommendations around what to do and have AI be an extra brain, so to speak, is really awesome. And I want to give a shout out to Orum as well. I think cold calling, one of the biggest challenges right now is getting people to pick up the freaking phone, right? So if you have a dialer and a virtual sales floor, that's going to make your job a lot easier as well. So go make sure to check out Zoom Info. Or our guest for today, we have Danielle Holmes, who is an enterprise sales development manager at Zoom Info. Daniel, why don't you say hi to everyone here?
Hello, hello. Glad to be here.
Good to have you here. We have Kevin Papili. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. Yeah. Okay.
Really? You got it. Thank you.
Senior Sales Development Manager at Zoom Info as well. Kevin, good to have you.
Good to be here.
Okay, so let's dig in, you guys. I want to talk high level. Let's talk about how cold email is performing. And specifically, what I think would be really good to look at is outbound in general, how that's performing as well. And across the board, what we've seen is an average of a 1% reply rate to emails. Pretty crazy. 1% reply rate, 5% pickup rate. So very few people are picking up the phone these days. And then cold calling is even harder. What I would love to hear from you guys in the chat, let us know, what reply rates do you see to cold emails in your organization? Give us that number or range in the chat. And Kevin and Danielle, I'm curious for you two, how have you seen cold email in terms of like difficulty? What have you seen in the last like 2 or 3 years? Has it gotten more difficult for you guys at Zoom Info, less difficult? Like, what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of generative AI, whether you're using Copilot, which I would love to talk more about, but even for the folks out there who are using Gemini, ChatGPT, or any of the LLMs out there, it's really easy to generate quick emails, which makes our lives so much easier. But I think when everyone has access to it the way they do now, that's where we start to see this decrease in reply rate. People just start to put these blinders on. They recognize the AI generated emails pretty quickly. So while it's gotten easier in one hand to write these emails, it's getting harder on the responses. So we need to do a little bit more to really stand out.
Yeah. So you mentioned something I think that's really important there, in that, usually what I'll share is a slide with like 50 different vendors on it that sell sales engagement platforms and email tools. And it's like at the click of a button, for oftentimes many of them are free, you can send hundreds or thousands of emails at a time. So it's just way noisier. So there's a lot more competition in there. What were you going to add, Danielle?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's because it's gotten so much easier to send emails at scale. It's gotten a lot harder to stand out in that crowd. And so one of the things that I know I talked to my team about and we're really heavily focused on here at Zoom Info is making sure that there's some kind of compelling something in the first line of the email, right? Like to make sure that we are getting a response, that people are opening those emails. And then even though this is, primarily about emailing, following up those calls really helps. It helps get us a higher reply rate just by proving to people that you're a person. It might have been an AI generated email or a mass generated email, but how do we make sure that they're actually getting to see it and breaking through that noise?
A lot of the data, if I was to give you guys the first pro tip before we should dig into email, statistically, and in Zoom Info, you guys have released stuff on this as well. Statistically, your email reply rate will double if you leave voicemails through your cadence and sequence. So the first pro tip I have for everyone here is, one, if you're not leaving voicemails, you should leave them. Email reply rates are going to double. Your pickup rate's going to increase by 25%. So the second, third, fourth time you call people, they're more likely to pick up if you leave a voicemail. The kicker here is when you leave voicemails, don't ask for a call back because that's hard to do as a prospect, to call someone back and play phone tag. And I don't know about you two, no exec is going to play phone tag with you. What you can do is point them to the email. So when you call them, it's, Danielle noticed XYZ trigger. A lot of what we're hearing from people like you is this problem. I sent you an email about it. The subject line is XYZ. You give the subject line of the email and you tell them to go look at the email. You will literally double your email reply rate by leaving good voicemails. So the purpose of a voicemail is not just to get a call back. You can use it to drive your reply rates as well. Okay, let's keep digging in. So the second thing that we want to do to kind of set this up, okay, there's this idea called cognitive load theory. This is super important with email. The best example I could give to you guys, we talked about TV shows and recommendations. The reason I asked that is that what Netflix will do a really good job of is when you log into Netflix or Hulu or HBO or whatever, the homepage serves you up with recommendations. Like, could you imagine, Kevin and Danielle, if we had to go through the entire by alphabetical order, like catalog of Netflix? You just would never do that. So they reduce the amount of work that it takes for the action that they want you to take. In this case, sitting on the platform, watching something. So the thing that we need to think about with email is how much effort are we asking the person on the receiving end to do? So there's a couple data points I want to share with you guys that are super important to set this up. One, there's a lot of noise. The average person has 274 unread emails in their inbox. The average person gets around 120 emails per day. And Kevin, Danielle, how many emails do you think the executives that you guys are reaching out to get on a daily basis?
Oh, it's got to be crazy.
Yeah.
Thousands.
And you know what? I can tell you, as much as they're not scrolling through and reading them one by one to catch up at the end of their day either.
Yeah.
I bet I'm just going to check my phone real quick, and I have 194 unread emails right now. If I pull up my inbox, what I'll do a lot of times is do a quick scroll, right? So maybe it is just I see the subject and that preview, and that even dictates if I open it. So you're competing for their attention in a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of big vendors out there. If you're selling in the enterprise space, you got to think everyone's trying to sell into the Microsofts of the world, the Salesforces of the world.
Exactly. Right. So there are hundreds of unread, unfiled emails sitting in people's inboxes. They're getting hundreds of emails a day. A lot of the executives that you guys are reaching out to, like literally they're getting hundreds of cold emails per week on top of the internal emails that they have to deal with. So noise is a really big problem that we're going to talk about today. The second one is, well, once someone decides to handle an email, how much time do you have to get them to take the action that you want? Well, Statista studied over 1 billion email opens last year, and they found that once a person decides to open an email, they'll spend about 9 seconds reading that email. That may sound like a long time, but the average person reads about 250 words per minute, so they can read about 50 to 70 words. That's all they have time to read. So what that means for us is we have to keep communication short, sweet, and have a really clear ask that's easy to comply with. This is a picture of my inbox. And again, I'm not a big exec, you guys. I run a small business. Like the people you're reaching out to get tons of garbage like you see on the screen. And I'm curious, drop into the chat as you guys are as we're going through this, I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat. What in these emails screams this is a sales email from a stranger? And I'd love to ask you too. Danielle, we'll start with you. What do you see here at a glance that's like, oh, that's obviously an email from a stranger that's pitching some sort of thing to me?
Lots of these buzzwords that are all about what the company is doing and not about what you're doing. They're not talking about what Outbound Squad is doing. They're talking about what they can do for Outbound Squad.
Yep. And the subject lines, they're just like, if I was emailing you two, I would not use subject lines like this because it sounds like a marketing email, right? It doesn't sound and look like an email that you would send to someone that you know. Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
That's exactly what I was going to point out, the subject lines. I think we try to get really creative sometimes with subject lines and paint a picture of what it's going to be like. But my mentality on subject lines, you just don't want to scare them away. I think we do more damage trying to make it like an advertising or marketing email, where if you have the mentality, if I was going to send an email to my boss, a coworker, maybe it's got a vague description of what's in it, but I'm not doing this overly verbose language. Like I'm not going to email my boss with his name and a big claim or anything like that. It's just going to be simple. So when you look at your subject line and you're trying to think, what should I make my subject? Think about what would disqualify it more than what's going to make it like above and beyond. I think you just want to avoid anything that's going to deter people from looking at it.
Exactly. And we're going to talk all about subject lines here in a bit. So I want to give you guys an example, like email breakdown of something that I got. And then we're going to look at a couple of other ones that like have some good before and afters. But if you guys are sending stuff that has the look and feel of what you see on our screen here, it's like, this is the stuff that's really easy to ignore. Unlocking efficiency, super generic, right? I recently reviewed your website and noticed some areas where we might be able to help Outbound Squad. What did you notice? That's what I would like to know. Give me the goods, right? Give me the goods. Tell me what you noticed. Make that the subject line. And then generically listing out the services. Nothing related to my industry here. It's like our latest project in the same industry, they should put in the sales training industry or with consultants or trainers or coaches or whatever. And then kind of like a okay CTA. This is like 90% of the emails that I get, maybe more than 90, probably 99%. They look a lot like this. And what we're trying to do, the problem that we are trying to solve is that emails have this one-to-many marketing style look and feel. They're very formal and filled with corporate speak. They're high effort to read and respond to. We want to do the opposite, you guys. Okay. The reframe here is like, how do I have a one-to-one and personalized look and feel? That doesn't mean I need to customize everything, though. How do I make it sound more human and one-to-one? How do I keep it concise and conversational? And then low effort to read and respond to. This is literally the difference in our experience of a rep that has a 1% reply rate versus a 10% reply rate. So what I want to do now is I want to start getting into the tactics of how a good email comes together. The first strategy that we're going to talk about is mobile ready emails. And I'm curious, as I'm pulling that up for you two, how do you guys like the phone? What role does that play in how you handle email? Do you open emails on the phone first and do a lot of the triage there? Do you reply via phone or desktop? I'll kick the question your way first, Kevin. Like, how do you handle emails in mobile? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. Just a moment ago when I was showing you, here's how many unread emails I have. Notice I pulled up my phone. A lot of people do check their email on their phone, including executives. They may be bouncing from one conference room to another and quickly getting emails while they're making that walk, and their replies are going to be just as quick. So it's really important that you're writing your emails so that they can be read quickly on a mobile device. So paragraphs, ton of links you need to dive through. It's going to be really tricky to do it that way.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
Danielle?
I know even my SDR team, like they'll be responding to emails on their phones too. Like, and I always challenge them, if you're looking at it on your phone and you're reading your own email, you're getting to ready to reply, look how long you're scrolling to get to the bottom of your email of what you sent. And it really helps kind of open their own eyes. So everybody from executives down to SDRs are on their phones. So mobile readiness is huge.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. I want to give you guys a quick preview. Make sure to stick around till the end of the webinar. What I'm going to be sharing with you And again, this is something that we build for our clients that we're just going to give you for free. There's an email design kit. So this is going to have everything from like tips to writing emails faster. I don't know if you two have ever tried this. Doing voice to text can be a really great way to write a great email. We're going to have our framework in here, subject line formulas, call to actions. There's breakdowns of real emails that you guys can see. So make sure to stick around. We're going to share that with you. And then we're also going to share this email mastery document. So this is like book form, everything that I'm going to show you today. So what I want to talk about first is this idea of mobile ready emails. Okay. There's a couple things that are super important. Just like Kevin and Danielle shared, prospects are 8 times more likely to open up emails on their phone. Most of the time, execs especially will triage the inbox and they'll decide if they're going to archive, delete, save stuff for later. They'll do that over the phone first. When we mobile optimize emails, we're going to have a higher reply rate. And there's obviously diminishing returns. We can't send emails that have 15 words, right? There has to be some content in the email. But in general, the shorter the email, the higher the reply rate. So first piece of data that I want to share with you, in general, we want emails to be around 75 words. It could be plus or minus 5, 10 words, but around 75 words. We want to use 1 to 2 sentence paragraphs. So here's a visual. This is an email. I don't know what you two think. This is not the worst cold email I've ever gotten. I mean, it's customized, turn complete strangers into paying customers. It's about ad spend. They talk about coaches. This is how that reads on desktop. This is how that reads on mobile. Same email. Mobile, desktop. Which one's easier for you two to read? Mobile, desktop.
Say the mobile version to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, probably. I like the white space in the first email because it is easy to see how it breaks it up. But the left to right is a big thing, right? If you visually your eyes, and it might be because I've got a full screen here to view it on.
Yep.
But to go across long lines, that is something that takes some mental. You're talking about like the mental capacity.
Yeah. Well,
I was
what
gonna
this
say
email?
desktop.
Go
I
ahead,
think
Dana.
desktop's easier to read on this one personally, but I'm mostly because I'm like looking at it from a spatial thing. I looking for those main words in it. I'm not reading every single word. I'm just kind of looking over and I see also I notice that you run like so that
Yep.
personalized bit that's in there is over on the right side of things. So by the time I get over there, that's where it's starting to talk about me, right? It's where it's starting to talk about
Yep.
you, Jason. So I think I'm getting more from the desktop personally, but
Yeah. And you can see we have really mixed answers in the chat too. So the idea here is on desktop, I'm going to show you guys a visual here in a second. My eyes, I don't really read all the stuff over here. I read the stuff here on the left. I read the first couple words of the sentence and I go down to the very bottom and see like, what is this person asking me to do? With mobile, for me personally, my eyes kind of glaze over when I see this and I just don't want to read it. But the thing that's really important here is that even on desktop, you can see like when we have really long sentence structure and long paragraphs, the text spans the width of the screen. Like you're looking at a widescreen monitor that I'm sharing right now. The text will span the width of the screen. And the stuff you see here in red, that's where people spent most of their time looking. The stuff in green is where they spent the least time. So optimizing like paragraph structure, even like if the person here just cut this email down by a third and had more paragraph spacing, it would make it easier to read. So you got to think about like when you're writing your emails, what's it going to read like on mobile and what's it going to read like on desktop? And how can you create more paragraph breaks? Formatting is like half the battle. By the way, a hack, I was talking to my wife, Sarah, about this yesterday because I was coming up with an email for an in-person event that we're doing. We're inviting some sales execs. A great way to think about it is like, if I was going to text this person, what would that look and sound like? And that's a great way to start your email too, because it's more like bite-sized and conversational when you text, because you usually don't text in big chunky paragraphs like this. Just a little pro tip. Okay, so that's the mobile part of it. The framework behind this, and what I want to do here in a second is we're going to show you some examples of this template and framework in action. And when I say template, what I really don't believe in is like, hey, if I give this template to Danielle that I use at Outbound Squad, this is going to be like some magic template that you guys use at Zoom Info, and then everyone here is going to have this magic template. I don't think the magic template exists. You got to create your own templates. But this is kind of the general flow and structure of a great email. So I want to show you guys this framework. We're going to show you a couple of examples of emails, and then we're going to kind of reverse engineer like what you guys see in action there. Okay. So there's 6 components to this, and then 4 really in the body here. What I call boring subject lines. So the idea with the subject line is I want to match internal communication. I want to make it sound like an internal email, 1 to 5 words. We'll talk about the data behind that. I want to open up by showing the prospect I did my homework. I want to talk about a problem I think that they might be having. People take action based on problems. I want to show value and social proof, and then I want a call to action. I need to ask them to do something. So when we look at subject line data, there's a lot of data that supports that subject lines with 5 or fewer words have the highest open and reply rates. So 5 words or less is going to have the highest open and reply rates. And I like to point out our friend Will Allred over at Lavender. He's got a platform. I would go follow him on LinkedIn if you guys aren't. He's got a platform that probably 3 million cold emails get sent through on a monthly basis. So he's got a lot of data on like what's working, but he calls it internal camouflage. So internal camouflage is making the email look like more of an internal email. Yeah, so Will Allred, I'll drop it into the chat. That's Will Allred. Tell him that I sent you. Runs a company called Lavender AI. Go check it out. Okay, here's some subject line frameworks, and then I would love to get your guys' takes on these. I think like pointing out the problem in the subject line can be pretty powerful. So instead of saying something, let's say you sell an AI-powered, customer experience like a chatbot. Instead of saying AI-powered enterprise, CX, if you notice something on their Canada Goose page and the chatbot's broken, put Canada Goose chatbot or Canada Goose page or just Canada Goose. Instead of we can get you more 5-star reviews, put negative review from so-and-so or just negative review could be the subject line. There are industry trends and problems. Like one of my old customers I talk about all the time, they sell an automated welding solution. It's hardware and software as a service. The #1 challenge that's top of mind for these large manufacturers is that no one wants to become a welder anymore. Everyone wants to go to college and get into sales, right? Work those white collar jobs. Welders was the subject line. 1 word, 90+% open rate. You can drop company initiatives, LinkedIn quotes. You can put people on their team in there. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but the bottom line is you want the subject line to be about them and not about you. So I want to pause here. Kevin, Danielle, we'll kick the question over to you first, Danielle. How do you think about subject lines?
It's short and sweet. Like, I think these are such good examples of how we flip it. I think one of the things when we were looking at that snapshot of the inbox earlier, every single one of them was talking about the company first, the seller first, instead of talking about who you're trying to sell to. And it's all about making it about your prospect. It's all about making it about what they're going to care about. And that starts with the subject line. So to these points right here, like the more you can focus on how we're going to solve the problem before we even just, I don't know, present the problem to them, it's very important that we do that. So.
Yep, absolutely. So talking about the problem, something related to them, some sort of initiative, maybe if you're doing enterprise or strat style outreach. Kevin, what about you? What would you add with subject lines?
Mentioned it a little bit earlier in the call, but that internal camouflage, I love that term because you want to write it as if you would write an email to someone else internally to your own company, because those are the emails that people open and read. I joke, I seemingly win a free cruise once a day in my inbox, but I'm not opening that email because nobody emails me in all caps saying, congratulations, you won, right? So extreme example, trying to just make a point by it, but you can do emails like this, make it human that you would actually send. Again, the AI powered one is another good example. the market, AI is getting infused into everything right now. It's not going to stand out. It's not going to have this jaw-dropping moment that you're maybe expecting your customer to have. So just make it relevant to them. Canada Goose chatbot. Like that's how someone on the marketing team would likely email their boss if the topic they wanted to discuss was that chatbot.
Yep. So internal camouflage, Darlene was asking in the chat, more examples. You guys can see a lot of this stuff here. Like this is a really good one. So let's say that I sell a call center solution that reduces the cost of the call center. Don't make the reduce call center cost your subject line. That doesn't look like a subject line that someone on their team would use. Interconnection cost reduction, that is literally the name of the initiative that they have shared publicly in 10Ks and 10Qs and that sort of stuff. So by internal camouflage, it's use words and phrases that they would use internally when emailing each other back and forth. Okay. We're going to show you guys some real examples of emails too, so you can see more. One thing that I would love is we're starting to get a lot of questions in the Q&A. One of the things that I would love for you guys to do is in the Q&A, open it up. You guys can actually give a thumbs up and vote on the questions that you want the answers to. So if you guys could do that as we're going in the Q&A, again, click the Q&A button at the bottom, give a thumbs up to the questions that you really want answered so that we can prioritize them, because it looks like there's going to be a ton there for us, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them. So let's keep going. All right. Calls to action. So this is like what to do with the last sentence of the email. So ton of data on this as well. So 100,000 plus emails that were looked at, and specifically it was what CTA is used at the end of the email. So in other words, like CTAs, what's the last line of the email? What are you asking for? And what this study from Gong shows is that interest-based CTAs tend to have the highest success rate. So what that means is when an email gets responded to, this includes not interested, unsubscribes, take me off your list, all that kind of stuff. Based on the reply rate, what percentage of those book a meeting? And what they found is that when you use interest-based CTAs, it tends to have a much higher success rate than open-ended or specific CTAs. Okay, so what's an interest CTA and what's kind of the thinking behind that? An interest CTA is something that asks for interest versus time. Right? So you open to learning more, interested in chatting further. Would it be a bad idea to share more? Can I share how this could be helpful for you at ABC Company, etc.? Right? Those are very low friction yes or no answers. The specific CTAs are not bad. So a specific CTA would be like, yeah, Daniel, can I get 15 minutes of your time? Are you free to meet tomorrow? Does 2 p.m. work for you this Friday? These are not inherently bad. I think where people tend to abuse this is they literally will just send 6 to 8 emails to someone over the course of a month, and every single email will be like a super hard ask for time. So the thing that I would recommend is finding a balance between the two of these and then avoiding open-ended questions altogether. Even with people that you know, like I find even internally, when you ask open-ended questions in emails, it's just like so much effort to respond to, and we're trying to reduce cognitive load and effort for the buyer. Open-ended questions don't make that easier. What are your guys' thoughts on CTAs, how to end emails, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the specific call to action and how it's not always a bad thing. My mentality is like, if you have that somewhere in your sequence or your email thread, the prospects will know that your intention is to have a conversation with them and talk. So now you don't need to keep hammering that same ask over and over again. That's where I like that balance between the specific and the interest CTA. Because again, they'll know if you're keeping the same thread that there's a desire to do that. So I like doing the interest one. I also like dropping a line, something like, if you're open to learning more, I have a few thoughts for you, right? Like we want to be able to share, like, hey, we've given you a taste of how we can potentially help. If it's I've got more I can share, right? Like it's that temptation, you want to get them on the hook. And then once we sit down for the meeting, you don't want to give absolutely everything away in your email.
Yeah, and I'd just add that on the interest-based CTAs, it really helps to like jumpstart that discovery process too, right? Like that's what's next. Once we get the response from the email, we're working on doing discovery. And kind of opens up that door to start understanding more, and it can open up so many more doors, right? Maybe it's not meeting with that exact person, but it allows them to say, hey, this isn't my responsibility, but here's so you can. So it opens that door for referrals instead of just, giving them that the open-ended and even the very specific ones open the door for no. But the interface opens the door to so many different places. So big fan of those.
Exactly. Okay. So let's shift gears. We've talked about framework. We've talked about data. What I want to show you guys is what does this look like in action? So again, I'm going to share this document with you guys in the chat here in a bit. So make sure to stick around until the end. We'll give you these documents. They're free. It's going to help you write great emails, all that good stuff. Okay. So this document's got the framework in it, our subject line formulas, our call to actions. I want to talk quickly about spam. Spam is like a very real thing right now, and a lot of cold emails are getting stuck in spam. There's a few big things in here I think that are super important. If you're finding that your open rates are pretty low, turn off click tracking. You want to avoid using spammy words like free or using $ in emails, that sort of stuff. I would highly recommend staying away from links or media in the first email at least. Some of you folks were asking about dropping videos, about dropping screenshots, images, GIFs, etc. Those are all great, but if you put them in the first email, it's very unlikely that that first email will go through. And if the first email doesn't go through, the rest of them are probably not going to go through either. Mail Tester is a tool that you can use to test your emails. Is this what you guys recommend too, like with bounce rates, keeping it under 5%?
Yeah.
So bounce rates are super important. Don't send too many emails to unverified email addresses. If you have more than a 5% bounce rate, what will happen is all your emails will just start triggering spam. This is a tough one.
I
Oh,
was
go ahead, Kevin.
admittedly, we're super spoiled on that one, right? With the contact data that we have. So it helps us avoid overages on bounce rates.
Yeah, and you guys have like never bounce, I think, built into Zoom Info now too, right? So
Yeah.
you got to verify your email addresses, you guys. This is a tough one. Unless you have multiple inboxes, like you really don't want to be blasting more than 50, 100 emails tops like per day out of your inbox, because you're going to have 50 to 100 emails going outbound plus all the emails that you're doing internally. And it just like, it looks really unorthodox and it looks like a spammer. And the number one thing is avoid being marked as spam. I don't know your guys' thoughts on this, but I would try not to send more than 2 emails per week over like 3 or 4 weeks, and then just stop. Once you get marked, once someone unsubscribes to your email, like you can't email them again, right? So don't do things that would prompt people to mark you as spam. So let's look at some of these email examples. So I have 3 examples here for you guys. And the way that I would love to do this is I want to show you the original email before the rewrite, get your guys' take and feedback on it, and then we'll show you the rewrite. So Kevin and Danielle haven't even seen these emails yet. So this would be our first time looking at it. So let us know in the chat what you guys think. We have kind of our feedback and that kind of stuff on the side, but this is an email for a company that sells an e-com solution, and they're reaching out to a Fortune 500 retailer. And I'll read the email because we'll have an audio version of this at some point. The subject line is online checkout experience. Hey, so-and-so, I noticed your executives recently emphasized to investors that simplifying the online buying journey is a top priority for blank. One challenge many companies face is cart abandonment due to complex checkout processes. 87% of carts are abandoned for this reason. Currently, company only offers PayPal as an express checkout option. We've seen companies like provide a seamless one-click checkout experience, convert 10% higher than other express options, 50% higher than guest checkout. Any interest in exploring the option? And by the way, a really great pro tip is reading your email out loud. I don't know about you guys, like reading that was just like, ugh. It was very hard to read the email out loud. It does not sound like how I would talk. What are your guys' high-level thoughts on the email?
I do like how it starts with the observation, right? Like it does show some research going in there. The part where that probably gave you that feeling reading it aloud that felt bleh, I think is going to be those percentages, which is great. Like it's so conflicting because so many people, they're like, this is super logical. I've laid out the logic. Why wouldn't a customer want to do this? But something I always try to come back to is people buy based off emotions, like how they feel about it, and then they justify it with logic. So sometimes we try to put the logic first and try to just, make it make sense that way. But some of those figures just don't land.
Yeah. And there's too many numbers. There's 3 different percentages in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we go back to thinking about the earlier thought of when you're reading this on mobile versus reading it on a desktop, like no matter what, I'm looking at those numbers first, like those stand out to me, and I'm seeing 87, 10, 50%, like those, what's the correlation? I need to be able to really quickly see those numbers and understand what story they're telling me. There's just too many words in this around the numbers if you want the numbers to be the thing that stands out, like pick one. In your first email, pick one that you want to be the number one thing. And then in your replies, you can add in the rest of those facts and figures, but keep it to one per email is like my personal preference.
That's a golden rule of emails. You can always send another email. Like, in fact, you kind of need a reason to send another email, so save it. You don't have to share everything. So this is the rewrite, and feel free, you guys, like, this is stuff I've worked out with clients that I know does get replies, but that doesn't mean that everyone here has to like it, including Kevin, you, and Danielle, you as well. So in this rewrite, what we did is I said, hey, if I research that executive, they just threw a town hall in a specific city. Let's make that the subject line, a specific city town hall. Hey, so-and-so, with the recent focus of the town hall and the work with, and this is where we drop specific employee names that this person mentioned in their LinkedIn. On same-day delivery, I did an analysis of the company checkout experience. I noticed only one express checkout option was available with PayPal. Same-day delivery wasn't in my area. Both could be impacting customer experience and conversion rates. A similar company fixed these and reduced cart abandons by 9.7%. Here's a 60-second video on how your checkout experience compares. Or I could ask, cool if I send over a video I recorded on the checkout experience. And then if they don't reply, I could bump it with the email, right? But I've got good internal camouflage, good attention grabber that's customized. The challenge is super specific. Then I have my relevant social proof plus outcome. What would you guys do differently here? And then here are the bump emails, by the way. So you could bump it with, here's the case study with so-and-so. This is a pro tip for senior execs too.
So you even touched on this as you were going through it, but the 60-second video is something that I probably wouldn't include. We spent some time talking about spam emails and making sure they get through. In my experience, if you have links to external websites, they could impact the deliverability rate. So videos are great, but also it does create a little bit more friction. You're almost now asking the customer to do a little bit of homework, click the link, watch the video. I like how you call that 60 seconds because that shows them it's not going to be a huge time commitment, but still you're taking the ask from what could be simple, this in email or on your phone, and pushing them somewhere else to do some more work. So I like the email. I like the rewrite. The white space is just visually easier to digest, feels more conversational. But if I had to critique anything, it'd probably be the video towards the end there.
Yeah, and this goes against what I recommended earlier too. So this should be formulated as a question. This should be formulated as a question. Yeah, I recorded a 60-second video of the checkout process and an opportunity to improve blank. Cool if I send it over, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you can see like how you can bump emails too. That's kind of the second strategy that we haven't really talked about is like spend the most amount of time on that first email if you're going to customize something and then bump it with really short emails. Like try not to send really long-winded emails back to back to back. Okay, let's look at another email. Okay, this is for a company that sells something very, very different. Cybersecurity. So the email was their company name plus the company name of the prospect. Hey, so-and-so, hope you're doing well. I saw you recently changed companies and are now currently working with XYZ company on their security engineering team alongside of so-and-so. I'm not sure if you're familiar with our company name. We are a risk exposure management platform working with Fortune 100 companies like XYZ to ensure they can see, protect, and manage all of their assets within their environment, regardless of what kind of assets they are, OT, IT, and or IoT as well. We haven't had a chance to speak with any of your colleagues this year, and we're hoping to connect at blank event, but didn't see any of them during the event. When next week would you have some availability for a brief sync. And again, very hard to read, very painful reading that email out. What do you guys think of this one?
Right off the bat, the hope you're doing well. That is my least favorite thing to see in an email. Nobody wants to see that. That's honestly at this point a trigger for spam in my mind. If I'm looking through my inbox and I see something that starts with "hope you're doing well," it's a sales email, it's a marketing email. It's going straight to the trash. So taking rid of that, or getting rid of that. And then the other thing too is that second paragraph. Oh my God, listening to you talk, like say OT, IT, IoT. It's too many things, too many words, too many acronyms. Like shorten that up, and you're going to get much better responses on that. And then one thing, sorry, I'll just say one more thing. The subject line, I think this is a hotly contested issue. Like people are gonna have different opinions on, your company and the company you're prospecting into. I think on a new business side of things, that's not super effective, but I know myself and Kevin both manage customer SDR teams, and that's actually really important for us, like having that. And we'd add in partnership in there because we do have an existing partnership. So pointing to that can be really valuable on the customer side of things. But on the new biz, it's a little bit hit and miss. So can work, cannot work.
With new biz, I want to like keep it as short and sweet as possible and remove pleasantries. Like if it's like an existing customer, you could say, "Hi Kevin, I manage your account with your AM, Danielle Holmes." That's okay to start those emails out, like, and giving some context. That's where I would put Zoom info in the subject line too, if it's an existing customer. A lot of those principles will apply, but let's look at the rewrite for this one. So just so you guys have the thinking behind this one, then I would love your feedback. What we did is we actually looked and said, hey, well, what are the triggers that cause a company to need some of this security help? Well, when they combine or open, close factories, like the security environment in those factories and manufacturing plants, there becomes a big gap there. So it's, hey, they had just announced that they closed these factories or opened them, one or the other. That's the subject line. Hey, so-and-so, people on their specific team were sharing their challenges gaining visibility into the OT environments in the new North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin factories. It reminded me of what the security team at similar customer shared with us. And this is like a quote, word for word, that this rep used from a problem that another CISO shared. We don't have great contextual info about the assets in our new plants. We have thousands of unmanaged devices. It's difficult to prioritize signal from noise, track remediation, and hold our departments accountable. We're helping similar company A and B address these exact challenges. Can I work with your EA to find 10 minutes to share more insights with you? Bump email, here's the case study. Can I work with your EA to share more insights? 77 words. This one's like pretty dialed from a length standpoint. I do think that the challenge statement could be shorter, but they wanted to use a quote with this one. Let us know in the chat. What do you think of this one? Kevin, Danielle, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'll start by just comparing the subject lines of each. The first one again had, I think it was company name for both the sender and receiver. And I just want to say, like, that's one of those tactics that probably was really effective when email automation first started coming out, where you had these merge variables, and it was like it would blow, right? The idea was it would blow people's minds. There's no way you could mass produce this email because it's got my name. And so this is so much better to me. People see through that the merge variables now look so much more relevant to what they're actually doing. I would want to be confident that they have an EA in this call to action. So if you're doing it at the higher executive level, the odds are going to be pretty high that they do, right? Especially if you're at the C-suite. Yep. If you're someone who sells into the director level, or if that's a great persona for you, I don't know if I'd feel as confident to just include, can I work with your EA? But again, the higher up you are, you can have a little bit more confidence to send it to you like that.
Yeah. It was almost like if you reach out to someone in the C-suite and they don't have an EA, there's almost like it's almost complimentary here, just like assuming that they have someone helping with that. Danielle, anything you would add?
No, and I will say I do like the quote in here. I don't mind it. I like that it's its own separate line. I think if you're going to include a quote, doing something to differentiate that, move it out of a paragraph, make it its own standalone thing, then the length doesn't bother me quite as much because it's clearly a quote, as opposed to trying to keep that into its or merge that into another paragraph. So visually, I actually like that.
Love it.
To offer
Cool.
one more alternative to the EA situation too, because I saw a few notes in the chat. Maybe you're reaching out to an executive, like let's say you're reaching out, in our situation, it could be the CRO. The CRO is going to care about all the pain points that we help solve for, but they might not be the individual responsible for bringing on new technologies. So that you could change that phrase to be, who on your team is responsible for XYZ, whatever you're selling. Could you introduce me to someone on your team who's responsible for this?
Yeah.
It's super easy. They're walking between meetings. Here's Bill, CC, right? And that's, now you've got someone at the executive level making an introduction for you to the person who's responsible for the technology or the solution that you're selling for.
Yeah. And if you're selling enterprise too, and you can do a little due diligence, sometimes it's nice to ask, hey, is Kevin the right person to talk to about this? Or would you recommend someone else?
Yeah.
Where you drop in a name. Okay, we got one more email we're going to show. So this is a sales example. All right. So this is one that you guys had sent over. So I'll read this one real quick and then let's get some feedback on this one. Hey, Jason, excited to let you know that ZoomInfo is already an approved vendor for Outbound Squad. So I just refilled in different stuff for the name there, which means you now have access to a powerful platform designed to help you supercharge your sales efforts. ZoomInfo provides everything you need to identify, engage, and close deals faster. With our platform, you can find ideal prospects, so access verified contact and company data to streamline outreach, capitalize on buying signals, use intent data to focus on prospects actively seeking solutions like yours, boost productivity, automate prospecting workflows, and seamlessly integrate with your CRM. To ensure you get the most out of ZoomInfo, I'd like to introduce you to April Brown, your dedicated AM. April will guide you through the platform's capabilities, provide tailored strategies to help you achieve your sales goals. We'd love to set up a time to connect, to walk you through the platform and introduce ourselves. So what feedback would you guys have on this one compared to what I dropped in here?
You can see it in the chat, but like the length of this email is just way too long. This is something, I know this is one that some of our SDRs here use, and like they'll argue that it has a good reply rate, and it does have an okay reply rate, but it is way too long. There's way too much about us in there, honestly. Even at looking at the ZoomInfo provides everything you need, and then going into the bulleted list, you don't even need that with our platform. You can, right? That's additional line spaces in there that we just don't need. And everything in here can be shortened so much more. But I do think it's important, like that beginning part of introducing the context of, hey, you're already, we already have an existing partnership, right? That's another important context here, is that this is going out to an existing customer that we're trying to white space into. So having that beginning part is important, but again, it can be shortened. And I think this honestly could be split into 2 different emails, save a little bit for that follow-up email, a little bit more context for that follow-up email. Doesn't need to be this long by any stretch.
Yeah, here, let's take a look at the rewrite. This is like, if I was just riffing on something, this is what I might do if I was that rep. So if this is an existing customer, let's say that we have a department that's already using ZoomInfo and getting some results. Like we help with AE self-sourcing. So let's say that's the thing. So the subject line would be like the first name of the sales leader who's in charge of that group. Hey, Jason, David's mid-market team used ZoomInfo to increase AE self-source pipeline by 20% last quarter. It would be great to share what's helping them get their A's to pick up the phone and prioritize outbound. Your dedicated AM, April Brown, is added to this email. Can we send over a few times to connect with you later this week or next? Super short, sweet. We got social proof there with the company. We talk about the problem. We're making an introduction to the AM. And then again, we could drop a case study into that bump email. Interested in hearing how you could leverage some of the insights from David's AEs. Like, think about like how you could leverage some of the internal insights and outcomes that we've already achieved, was sort of my thinking. What do you guys think? Is there anything that you would do differently here?
No, I like that rework. I think it looks good. And I think even if you were to think about this for those people out there who are operating on a new business model and you can do the same thing with social selling. Think about your existing customers that you already have, who might be a direct competitor that you're trying to reach out to, and that you guys are already, that maybe is already leveraging you, and how you can spin that into their, I don't know, get them to answer and think about it. I think anytime that you can basically create that, that envy within people that, oh, they're doing something that I'm not, we should be doing that. I think it's good. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, not to take us back, but if I just wanted to point it out, if we scroll back to the original email, when we kicked it off, I talked about how LLMs, whatever you're using, ChatGPT, people start to get a sense, whether it's like bold in your face or not, there are some things that will signal to you that this was written by one of those models. And to me, what stands out, a powerful platform designed to help you supercharge your sales efforts. I don't know about you, but I know very few people that would use supercharge in their natural language. So you got to be really careful about this overly verbose, colorful language. I dial it out. Like, I love ChatGPT. I love all those different models to help me generate ideas quickly. Most of the time, whatever it spits out, I am chopping out words. And this would be, like, in that first paragraph, a clear example of that.
Yeah. I think, again, 2 pro tips here is when you're going to write an email, like a really great way to get it conversational is to like literally open up your iMessage and pretend like you're texting the person, or use some sort of voice to text, like talk it out loud and capture that. It can be really, really helpful. Okay, so we got about 7 minutes left here. Here's what I want to do. Let me share this document into the chat. And I want to do it now because we have a lot of people that are going to try to access it, and hopefully it lets all of you make a copy of this, okay? So make a copy. I'm dropping the document into the chat. Click on that link. Yeah, Greg, this is targeted at B2B folks. So we don't have B2C examples. This is for B2B. But click that link, make a copy. That's going to have all of the stuff that we just talked about, the breakdowns, all of that stuff. Make sure to copy paste that link. I'll drop it again. Copy and paste that link if you need to so that you can grab it later because it's busy. I think it lets about 100 or 200 people access it at a time, and we have 900 people trying to get access to it. So just hang tight. Keep trying it. We'll share it a couple more times. I thought it'd be good to answer some questions. Sadipa asks, can you please suggest the email script? We did that today. So you guys have the template and structure in that document. The second question, though, is how could we scale emails that are personalized and relevant? I'll kick this first question your way, Danielle. When you think about like scaling emails and personalization relevance, like how do you think about doing that in a way that doesn't take an hour for someone to write an email?
Yeah, I think it just depends on how you think about what that personalization is, right? It's difficult to scale the super individualized personalization, but you can personalize based off of what their title is, what their company is. I know at the top we kind of mentioned Copilot a little bit, which is our AI tool. Like, one thing that my team is using it for is it uses our internal data, right? So it's connected to our CRM, so we can see the history of these the interactions with our customers, and so thinking about personalization on a scale of, hey, you know, we talked about this a couple of years ago and we lost the thread. Let's pick it up back up, right? That's personalization. Or even thinking about like, what are their priorities? Think about what the priorities for the persona that you're reaching out to. And that can go across the industries. It can go across more than one company, what those personas are going to care about, right? Like, you think about your CRO, they're always going to care about increasing sales and increasing their numbers, right? So if your product is able to help do that, you can personalize at scale to those kinds of titles. It doesn't always have to be, you know, hey, Jason, I saw that you just hosted a webinar about X, Y, and Z. We can help with that, right? It doesn't have to be necessarily an individual personalization. It can be on so many different levels. And so thinking about that and thinking about how you can scale it from that perspective, I think is super helpful.
Yep. Absolutely. So we will send out an email, you guys, with the document as well. That's not going to go out for a couple days. So again, check out the link there in the chat if you want to grab that. Thank you, Danielle. So Dennis asks, I hope you are doing well. Is that line still effective? Any suggestions for an open? I think we've talked a lot about why you shouldn't do that, but how should someone open up an email, Kevin?
Yeah, I will definitely take that one. This is a funny one because I think salespeople are usually that type A, super friendly personality, if I'm generalizing. So it's really tempting. You want to be warm and open it like you'd maybe open with your friend. You want to greet them, how you doing? The reality, and if anyone here has covered New York City as a territory, right? Their attention span is going to be really small, or their patience, I should say. So my guidance is just take it out altogether, get right to the meat. Skip through any sort of pleasantry and just get right to the content. Because if you can think back to the beginning, Jason, you showed a screenshot of your inbox and you get that preview message, right? And if the first line is the hope this email finds you well, like that's going to get that mental flag sales email, not even going to get read. So you could have the best email written underneath it that checks all the other boxes. But if it doesn't get open, it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, so Drew's got a great question. Drew Holstein. When you sell a really technical product in a market that requires education about what you're selling and the value it brings, how do you strike a balance between explaining how you solve a problem they might have with being concise and under 75 words? I think that you guys are so big at this at Zoom Info. This is where I kind of picked it up from a couple of years ago when we started doing webinars together. Is people who talk about product versus customer voice a lot. And I think that a lot of times what we try to do in sales is, if this is our world over here and this is our buyer's world, we try to say, hey, let me bring you over into our world. But with cold outreach, it's like these people didn't ask you to reach out to them. So you have to start in their world first. And the things that they care about is like their priorities and their goals and the challenges. So if you can speak to the problems that your solution solves for the buyer, and you get that by listening to chorus calls, by hopping on sales calls, by asking people, asking ChatGPT. If you're a BDR and your sales calls aren't recorded, you ride shotgun on those sales. Like the language is just sitting right there inside of these buyer conversations. So that language is what you want to use. That's all we have time for today, you guys. I think the big thing that we want to leave you with is, like, if there was one thing that you took home with you, make sure to check out that document. We'll email it out again. Reduce the cognitive load that it takes to process and figure out what to do with your email. You do that in two ways. Shorten the length of the email so there's less to read, and don't ask for so much. Don't share a case study and ask for time and ask another question in the email. You get to ask the buyer to do one thing in that email. So really reduce that. This is great though, you guys. Love the engagement. Danielle, Kevin, thanks for hopping on and spending an hour with us. We really appreciate your time. And that's all I got for you guys today. Happy hunting, everyone. We'll see you soon. Later.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
Phil. Bye.